Taming Lightning is made available by blog, podcast, and video for educational purposes only, as well as to give you general information and a general understanding of plasma and neon, including the following topics, but not limited to: high vacuum, electrical, and chemistry. By using the information, you understand that any and all instruction provided may be of incomplete knowledge and is not intended to be used without professional guidance and supervision. Taming Lightning Podcast is supported by the Pittsburgh Glass Center, a nonprofit public access glass studio and one of the top glass facilities of its kind in the U.S., with a knowledgeable and friendly staff and a safe, fun atmosphere. Our community is made up of artists, collectors, college students, or just those fascinated by glass. Depending on your interest and schedule, there's a class for you, be it a 2-hour introductory workshop, 8-week classes, or 5-day summer intensives taught by artists from all over the world. As of now, an update on plasma classes offered at Pittsburgh Glass Center. The 2-night Plasma Glows workshop taught by yours truly for March and May are full, and our summer 5-day intensive Light Up Your World with Plasma taught by Wayne Stradman and Mundy Hepburn are sold out. My first Plasma Glow workshop was just finished last week. I learned a lot from that class, and my students had a great time being introduced to the rare process. I plan on teaching the workshop again next spring to better implement what I've learned from both workshops, as well as take into consideration the knowledge and information presented by both Wayne and Mundy when they come here for the summer workshop. Be on the lookout for private lessons when they become available at Pittsburgh Glass Center. Welcome back, or welcome to the Taming Lightning Podcast. I'm Percy Eccles II. I am the host of Taming Lightning, as well as the emerging neon tech at Pittsburgh Glass Center, where I'm researching and developing a space for exploring plasma and neon light. Taming Lightning is an educational blog and podcast about the art, science, and history of plasma and neon light, looking beyond its associations with novelty and sign making, and to explore the potential of rare or noble gases by learning about those that use them. We'll be talking with artists, makers, and researchers, each guest offering their unique knowledge and experience. The intro is Boost by Joachim Karud. Joachim is a Swedish artist who loves to create enjoyable and awesome music for YouTube and any other social media, and does so for copyright-free use. Be sure to support his music by giving credit when used, subscribing, and/or by donation. You can find him on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Patreon. In today's podcast, we'll be talking with Mundy Hepburn, a luminous glass artist who's been making lights since 1976, with over 30 years of experience working in plasma. In his work, he embraces his inner mad scientist and alchemist, with his studio containing many different tanks of noble gases, tubing, valves, gauges, and other doodads. His approach is especially unique in that he uses soft glass, such as seen in furnace glass blowing, to create life-size plasma lamps and vessels, as well as his use of neon torches for shaping hand-pulled glass tubing to create distinct forms and gestures. Mundy has been a great source of wisdom, knowledge, encouragement, as well as having a personality of seemingly boundless energy. I appreciate all he's done as a friend and mentor, and very excited to have him as an instructor at Pittsburgh Glass Center this summer. All right, Mundy. Now that we know that your dentist appointment went pretty well, and I was kind of worried about, not being able to speak on the podcast today, but everything turned out pretty good, huh?
Oh, yes. So, let's see, what do we do? I'm Mundy Hepburn, and I make lights, and I've been making lights since 1976. And those were neons. And then in 80 something? Yeah. My brother sent me the cover of the Sharper Image catalog, and there was a Bill Parker plasma light. And I was very depressed because I had been out-grooved by someone. I thought I was the grooviest artist, but no. So it took a long time and a lot of fussing around to experiment and learn. And in the past 5 years, I've realized that in trying to make art with lit glass, I've more or less worked to standardize the process by which plasma is made and try to make it more, well, take it from a science experiment and turn it into a product or a product manufacturing technique, or better yet, an artistic medium where you don't have to fuss with, is it going to light up, or is it going to last, or is it going to burn their house down? Mm-hmm. Those are the main considerations. The thing with plasma is, being a high voltage, open-ended, single electrode kind of thing, you're discharging energy into the environment. With neon sign tubes, you have a transformer with 2 wires coming out of it, and you stick 1 wire on each end of the neon sign tube, and you plug it in, and it lights up, and that's very simple. Electricity goes between the 2 wires. In plasma, you got 1 wire, and electricity is blasted into the lamp, and then it dissipates out of the lamp into the local environment, and then to ground, which is the earth. Mm-hmm. So in a plasma lamp, if you were to take, say, your car keys in your hand and hold it up next to a strong plasma lamp, maybe touch the glass, you can see a little bit of a spark. And if you take a Kleenex and hold it near that spark, you can ignite the Kleenex. So that's a potential source of ignition, an unintended potential source of ignition.
And similarly, people with medical devices we kind of have to put those signs out saying, hey, those with pacemakers or defibrillator, be aware that this is, the type of environment. But my research on that was that it's not going to destroy the device unless you got an unwieldy, powerful plasma piece, but more so knock it offline.
Well, that's exactly right.
And so you just need to go back to your doctor and make sure it's still functioning. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, a properly designed plasma piece is not going to give enough electricity to a person touching it to damage their pacemaker or defibrillator or anything like that. It's just that now that there's more and more people interested in plasma, there's more and more information needed about it, and you have more and more inexperienced operators doing things that may be unsafe or may not be, depending on who knows, depending on, as you say, like if you overdrive, this is the trouble with plasma, is when you're first learning to make those arcs inside of that glass, you need a lot of voltage, a lot of juice, and the arc is relatively small, and it takes a lot of energy to drive it. As you gain experience making plasma, your arcs become more conductive and are still beautiful, but take probably 20% of the power to drive. Years ago, I put a lot of xenon, or like a typical lamp. That product I made in 98, Sculptured Electra, it has in it 55 millimeters of xenon, pure xenon, and it runs at 15 watts, 40 kilohertz, and it runs nice. But if you want to make a lamp, like there's a lamp nearby, I gave one to the library many years ago, and it's 9 feet long, purple glass. It's got xenon inside of it, but I added neon also. Now, I don't exactly remember how much neon, but I remember adding a little bit of neon to it, and it made it so that when you grab the lamp, the xenon doesn't go all conductive and give you a shock. It tempers the conductivity of the lamp. So this was sort of counterintuitive. If you add less xenon and neon up to maybe 200 millimeters, you get a lamp that it has that same xenon look, but it's far more conductive. And when you grab it, it doesn't go out of spec, and it doesn't draw the energy off the inverter into your hand. So it's little subtle things like that that slowly people are learning. And it's just been a long, long time to learn how to make a lamp that is totally stable, totally safe, and beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of disparate characteristics that need to be reconciled, sort of conflicting requirements, more or less, that need to be reconciled. Like the inverter, the power supply, that's been a long, long time. And I've ended up making my own transformers. Anders Mikkelsen designed the circuit board, and it's a beautiful circuit board with sort of an intelligent board. It knows when it's getting overamped or underamped or too warm. It knows when it goes out of spec, and it shuts itself down. The thing is, the output transformer is the critical piece to the inverter, to the power supply and lamp system. You got to match your power supply to your lamp. You got to match your lamp to its local environment. So it's it's a lot of really weird little details that make or break you. Mm-hmm. And it's been, a long time just experimenting and learning and struggling to get it so that I feel pretty confident now about making what I would consider to be a safe product, putting it out into someone's living room or bedroom, and have them turn it on every night and groove to it, and it'll be safe for 20 years. Like I got that lamp down in the over in the library, I put in 99, and today's 18, so that's 19 years it's been sitting there every day on for whenever I just wired it into the lighting circuit, so whenever the library's open, this lamp is on. And the electrode isn't even sputtering. I mean, how the ends get blackened. Yeah. Now, that's a homemade electrode. That's an aluminum electrode. And that's another thing that people don't know how to, it's all these little details. It's really cool to see how so many people on the internet now are making plasma or learning to make, taking an interest in neon and its extension, neon plasma lights. And there's a lot of experimentation and stuff, but people are using borosilicate, and they're using neon sign electrodes or borosilicate neon sign electrodes, and that'll work and stuff, but they gas off, and they're big and ugly, and there's a lot of expertise that needs to be out in the world before this medium can become as tried and true as regular neon. And what's interesting is that lately I've realized that plasma can be seen as an extension, a refinement of neon sign, because you need to know your vacuum hygiene, but you also need tanks of gas as opposed to glass liters of gases. So you got to get a tank of helium, neon, argon, krypton, and xenon, and then you got to have some nitrogen is nice, and an air bleed in is nice, and all those things. People nowadays are using halogens in their lamps, and that is, chlorine or bromine compounds. And I did this years ago for many years, and it ruined my pump, and the lamps just wouldn't last. And so now I just stay away from the halogens. And I just used the rare gases and nitrogen and air. And Larry Albright said all he uses is just rare gases. You can get a lot of nice arcs with pure gases, no nitrogen, no air, no halogens. But, years ago, I had a little ampule of methylene bromide in neon, and I'd put a little bit of that in a lamp, and then I'd bleed in some xenon, say 10 millimeters xenon, and 5 millimeters helium, and up to maybe 250, 300 of neon. And oh my God, you get this arc that would swirl, and it would be silver and green. And when it hit the glass, it would splatter in little purple stars. And it was just to die for. Oh, I love that arc. And I made a big lamp of it. And I brought it out to, Pontiac, when Habitat Galleries there was in Pontiac. And Ferdinand sold it, $3,000 or something like that. He let it run all night, come back the next morning, and in the place of the purple stars, there's this gray-blue haze. And it was like, what happened? Well, I had a long nickel wire as an electrode. It was a drip shape. It was like 5 feet tall by about 10 inches across at the bottom. It was a big elongated drip. And I had run a nickel wire down the center of it, just dangled it in there, and then I got Dumet, so I just assembled an electrode up top. And the nickel must have eaten the bromine. Nickel bromide is a stable salt. And it just pulled the bromine out of the vacuum, and the lamp went bad. And Ferdinand was livid. He had to give the people back. He's like, you realize what you made this gallery look like? I'm, oh God, I'm so sorry. Oh geez. It was like, oh Jesus. Another time someone grabbed the electrode wire and got a tremendous shock. And then at a different time, someone was there at an opening, and they grabbed a bulb, because I make a lot of drips with lightning inside. They grabbed the bulb, must have lifted up, and the hanging loop came off the nail up top, and they let go, and the whole thing smashed on the floor.
Oh, goodness.
My God. Now what? So Ferdinand put up with a lot. He was a long-suffering, fine and loyal soul. Oh, well. But after that, I was like, all right, I got to get this together, really kind of refine it. So that's been the focus. I finally kind of understand that's my job, is to focus on really refining the medium. So that's the hard part.
And how is connecting with all these different people in the Plasma Art Alliance since the Mona show, This is Plasma? How has that helped you?
Well, see, that's actually really wonderful. What happened was I saw something on the internet, and it was from Wayne saying that he was going to be really cool and do a plasma show at Mona. And my, of course, teenager response is, well, I want to be cool too. So I called him up, I was like, oh, man, you're cool and I ain't. He's like, well, you should come. It'll be fun. I'm like, all the way to California? I don't know, man. That's pretty far. I might even have to get off my ass and make an effort or something like that, God forbid. So I got online, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. It's not just Wayne. It's a whole bunch of people. And then I'm like, ooh, I'm going to send a piece. So I called up Kim, who runs Mona, and she's like, yeah, we'd love a piece. I was like, oh. So I learned how to build a box. You go to Lowe's and you get utility board. It's kind of like Luan, except it's stronger. And with Luan, with the utility board and furring strips and a drill and sheetrock screws, I built the most wonderful box. And then I went to the dump and I got an old mattress and razored it. Attacked, at the dump they got the mattresses. You attack them with razors, and some of them are made of foam rubber. And I got this massive chunk of foam rubber, and I carved it up and made a beautiful shipping container for a lamp that's 6 feet tall. It weighs 15 pounds. It's a big piece of glass. Actually, you can see it. Mona put up on their Plasma Art Alliance website. They put up a video of that Mona show. Just recently they put it up.
Yeah, it was really well done.
Yeah, it was very nice. So at any rate, the biggest, grooviest, and of course the best piece is mine. And so Wayne was really nice. He was very gracious and invited me out there. And so now it's like, all right, Wayne, you're my personal handler. You tell me what to do and I'll do it. So now he tells me about another show, and so I'm going to do that one too. Well, what was the point? Oh, yes, just socially, because, I've spent literally 40 years in the basement of my mother's house working, and it's been fun, but it's lonely. And so it was wonderful to go out to California where there isn't any snow in the middle of February. You know, it's like, I'm from New England. In New England, it's good to suffer, and all that kind of horseshit. So it was wonderful going out there and meeting all the plasmaticians and meeting you and hanging out and just realizing there's people that give a goddamn about this stuff. Because, I mean, I thought I was alone. It's just like Wayne said. He's like, geez, you know, I work and I sell my stuff and it's hard to do. And I figure, you know, how many people, you look on the net, 10 years ago, you look on the net, who's doing plasma? Well, I don't know, a few people. And everybody's struggling, you know, oh, we need a good inverter. What should I use for electrodes? How do you mix this gas? How do you do the vacuum? And it's like, yeah, how do you? Well, that's why we're teaching a course at the Pittsburgh Glass Center in early August of this coming summer.
Yeah.
That
Which is pretty
information.
exciting.
Yeah, well, it means you got to go out and set up your fires and stuff. But at any rate, we'll get that all together, build a shop. See, that's the thing. I do soft glass. And I do soft glass because back in the 60s, that's all there was. You know, when I was born in 55. So in 1963, I was 8 years old, and I saw Mr. Paul Geyer making glass animals on a crossfire at the Guilford Fair just down the road here. And I was fascinated. It's like, what is that thing? The fires are all blue and they're pointy. How do they do that, you know? And then you hold those funny colored sticks and they get all glowing and they turn melted. And so I went home and melted light bulbs on our kitchen stove. It was a Magic Chef, they called it, and it was a gas stove. And I held the light bulb on there, and it kind of sucked in, and I was fascinated. And my mother caught me, and I got in trouble. But then she was amazed that I had fire polished the edges of the piece of glass from the light bulb. I was fascinated just because it was something I could do at home. So I just kept messing around for the next 50 years, and here we are. So now it's interesting that you would bother calling me up and saying, let's do a podcast. And I'm thinking, we should have a plasma party. With the way all the pot pipe people have pot pipe parties, we should have plasma parties. So it's like set up a lab and an oven and some tanks, and everybody gets to play around, get a furnace, get torches. See, that's the thing that I like about my particular method of doing glass, is that you get a furnace of glass, you use all the Reichenbach colors, you do regular furnace glass blowing, you can make shapes that are well adapted to being further lamp worked, and then I make big gas air fires that can melt a 4-inch diameter tube that you've pulled at the furnace. So you make forms at the furnace. And here's the thing, is that I make a glass that has more of the expensive fluxes and less of the crackative stuff. So instead of your spruce pine or your nuggets or what, you make a custom glass with a little more barium, a little less soda, a little potash, a little lithia, you know, and use dolomite and go easy on the dolomite instead of the limestone, and add a little borate, you know, a little zinc, and you mix up a glass that is longer working and slightly lower melting, but of the similar expansion as the standard glass blowers glasses. And well, even with spruce pine, if you pull shapes off your blowpipe, you pull them less than 3 millimeters thick. You don't have to anneal them right off the bat. So you can pull forms, work them with your torches, your gas air fires, and then anneal them and make them into lamps. And you got total control of the shape, the color, the size. So, I mean, maybe someday, probably someday soon, they're going to have boro furnaces. They already do, but a really good boro furnace that truly can liquefy the high melting glass. So it'd be interesting to be able to actually glass blow with boro which I don't know if there's an advantage. I mean, I do a little boro here and there, but I don't feel like paying for oxygen. And the truth of the matter is, aesthetically and sensually, in fact, this is the most important part of this whole discussion. For me, experientially, to have a large, soft fire, a gas air fire, and a large, gentle, soft glass tube, I can make things, sculptural items, large items, out of multiple colors, out of soft glass, that are very difficult to reach with boro, because boro, you've got this small, tight, hot little fire, because it's a gas ox fire. And if you run a big fire, you're just about barbecuing your nipples and burning off your eyebrows, in just trying to get your tube hot enough to work. And, you don't have access to all those wonderful colors that you can get with soft glass. Granted, in boro, there's a range of colors that are inaccessible in soft glass.
Very true.
But I'm old school. I like what I'm familiar with. But I'm sure that people could do beautiful things in boro. But now you've got to get good at making glass to metal seals. I noticed Bruce Suba is now selling electrodes with tungsten seals. Mm-hmm. But there are these barium aluminosilicate glasses that are compatible with Kovar and Pyrex, or 33 boro glass. And eventually, someone must start getting good at doing Kovar to boro seals with this intermediate glass. It's called EN1. It's from Electro Glass Products, Pleasantville or Pleasant Valley, Pleasant something. Might be Pleasantville, Pennsylvania. But at any rate, there's a whole variety, and then you got to bake your Kovar in wet hydrogen to degas it, and then you seal it to this intermediate glass, and you can seal it right into borosilicate. This way, you can make decorative electrodes. So what I use for electrodes is I go to the store, go to Beard Lumber, and I buy a roll of aluminum flashing, such as the kind you would redo your chimney with. And I take it home and I snip it up into shapes and stuff, and then I cook it in my fire, in my gas air fire, and I cook it up, and it slumps. You got to be careful or else it'll splatter on the floor. You warm it up, and you cool it, warm it, cool it, warm it, cool it. What you do is oxidize the surface. And then I use Dumet wires to go through my soft glass, because my regime of expansion is between 96 and 100. So Dumet wires are compatible with the, now it's universal lead-free neon sign tube, which has an expansion of between 96 and 100. It'll stick to all those glasses. So that's what I use as my intermediate glass for manufacturing my own electrodes. This way your electrode can be a shape. You can rub phosphor into the electrode and have the electrode glow with a gas discharge color. It's the electrode body. Say you rub green phosphor onto an electrode, stuff it into your lamp, weld it in there, and then do a neon-rich mixture. You can have a green glowing electrode with a red halo around it with blue lightning coming off of it. It is like, oh, this is good. So there's all these opportunities that hopefully soon people will begin to use artistically and safely. And that's another thing, is that when you make a big plasma vessel, you want to make sure that the pressure in there is close to atmospheric, because like xenon at 50 millimeters is totally unsafe in a large vessel, because outside of that vessel is 750 millimeters air pressure, regular 14.7 psi. You're breathing right now 15 psi or 750 millimeters of pressure. So when you pull a vacuum on there, you pull it down to 1/100th of a millimeter, and then you throw a rock at it. It implodes like a TV tube. Have you ever been to the dump and smashed TV sets? It's really cool.
No, didn't quite feel
Boom.
that dangerous.
Oh man, they go boom. They throw glass and they explode. But they implode. So the danger is plasma lamps can do the same thing, because there are many beautiful arcs that are down around 100 millimeters, 200 millimeters. And, if you have a big bubble, like I blew a bubble. I almost passed out blowing it. It was like 2.5 feet tall and 2 foot in diameter, 3 feet tall and 2 foot, huge bubble. I mean, it was like probably 4.5 gathers on the blowpipe, and I just let it drip off, and I kept puffing into that pipe, blowing and blowing and blowing and blowing it. It got huge, and it dripped off just nice. And then I filled it, and I thought, this could kill you if you mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I filled it, and I kept adding pressure. I got up to 500 millimeters pressure. So if somebody drops it on the floor, it's not going to go boom and hurt them. So you always have to think of that. Keep your arcs conductive and keep your pressure up. And see, that's the rub. The more gas pressure you put in a lamp, the more the electricity has to struggle through to drive it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes some finesse to put just a little bit of impurities, nitrogen or air, in the lamp. Then you run it a bit, then you suck it out. You leave a teeny bit, and then you start backfilling with gases, and that's how I get all my pretty effects.
So regarding to your making your forms, one of the questions I get from people as I'm learning this is especially when you're using soft glasses, the choice of using colored glass or using a phosphor in your form. Like, how do you come up with how do you decide whether or not to leave it clear?
That's a good question, actually. It's a question that bugs me every day. Okay, you got idea. Now, how are you going to realize that idea? What are you going to do? Well, I want it to be such and such, and I want it to be pretty during the day. Okay, well, if it's going to be pretty during the day when the light's not visible, then it should have some color in the glass. So, okay, I make up a pot, and I throw some chrome oxide in there, and I got a pot of green glass. So I'm pulling out all these beautiful green forms, and then I think, ooh, I want to put red arc in the green glass. And I go to put a red arc and put a neon in there. You cannot see it because the goddamn glass is green, and it filters out all the beautiful red arc. So there are compromises and opportunities aesthetically, electronically, physically. All of these things have to be balanced in order to make this medium work for you. So let's say, okay, like the New Britain Museum, I guess on my, Facebook page, there's a picture, what do they call it? The cover photo of my Facebook page. It shows all these pretty lights all lined up and stuff. And that's up in the New Britain Museum. And I thought, okay, look, these things are in a hallway. It's got glass on both sides. During the day, it is brightly lit by the sunlight. So I got to use colored glass, or else it's going to look stupid during the day. It's going to look like a bunch of nothing. Clear glass, during the day it disappears. So I use colored glass, and I was like, oh, damn. So this one's red. Okay, you got to put red in it. Well, how are you going to make it bright? Well, I'll add red phosphor. And then you add red phosphor to red glass. It's like, why does it look like shit? Well, the transmissivity of the red glass is different from the output of the red phosphor. So you could either commit suicide or you add a little bit of blue. Blue? Yeah. You put pink phosphor inside a red glass, and it looks better. Just one of those things.
How that light gets filtered out through the colored glass? Is that?
Yeah. See, that's the trouble. Oh, no, that's actually a good way to say it. The colored glass functions as a light subtractor. It will only pass, say, red. If it's red glass, it will only pass red light. The phosphors are emitters, so they give off light. So when you're mixing up phosphors, you mix up red and green phosphor, and you get yellow. You mix up red and blue phosphor, and you get pink. It's really cool. You mix, because it's additive color, and you got to get used to this. So, like, if you want an orange phosphor, you mix red and green. Wicked cool. And not only that, nowadays there's LED phosphors, which I'm messing with. I haven't checked them for life, and God knows they're expensive, like $5 a gram, up to $20 a gram, instead of, pennies a gram. At any rate, they emit in the reds and the oranges and the yellows very specific wavelengths, just beautiful colors. But the grain size is large. They're difficult to apply. I'm working on application systems and, I don't know, sliming it on with some kind of mineral silicate or something. At any rate, there's a million things that need to be experimented with right now, and it all goes towards an aesthetic experience. So it's really cool to do science in the name of aesthetics. It's a wonderful mix of experimentation and struggle and despair, but the occasional achievement. It's like, how do you do that? It's like, you got to add just the right amount of nitrogen, and then you're all set. It's the balancing of these factors is a fascinating study. And after 50 years, I can tell you I am just beginning. And actually, that's why we're talking now, is because I got to hand this off. I got to see what all the kids do, because it needs fresh brains. It needs fresh hands. I get tired at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Christ, I get tired in the middle of the day. So. But it's coming. It's coming. So I guess for my trip, it's the soft glass, those wonderful torches that I'm making. I guess that's the thing. You make your own torches, you make your own transformers, or I make my own torches, I make my own transformers, I make my own glass specific to the medium. And I've gone down the road and used the commercial stuff. I'm getting to the point where I can actually use that. It's more brittle, but it can be used. Mm-hmm. You could just use spruce pine, pull a bunch of forms, but then you got to build a big annealer. That's the thing. I got a gas annealer, and I went to the dump and I got the fans out of dehumidifiers, and they have steel blades, and I extended the shaft and about 2 foot long. So I built this big ass oven with a gas burner that squirts fire inside, and then I put fans inside the oven blowing the hot air around. And so I've got an oven that's 9 feet deep, 4 feet wide, and almost 3 feet tall. And the temperature variation is like 1 or 2 degrees any place in the oven because of these 2 fans. It's really cool. And then I used to have a fancy thermocouple controller on it.
Wait, hold up. So you're saying you created some kind of convection oven, I guess.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Really simple. Well, I mean, I went to Pizza Hut. It's like watching, because it was really busy and they were super busy. And so I ended up staring at this oven, and they shove a raw pizza in one end, and 2.5 minutes later it comes out the other, and it's like, what is that thing? Well, that's a convection oven. I was, what the hell's that? Oh, it's got a fan inside. I thought, oh, that's real fancy. I thought, well, you blow the heat around and there you have it. So I went home and tried it. Thank you, Pizza Hut. It works. At any rate, so these specialized equipment things that, it seemed so impossible at first, but you just do it. And it works sometimes. And, you learn from your failures. You just got to do it 100 times and then it'll work. And it only takes a lifetime.
Well, that's the exciting part when it comes to classes. Like, even though I'm just teaching like the basic classes for just, making an ornament or people making paperweights, it's exciting to see how people interact with the material, and that kind of inspires me to take a different approach to how I work in glass.
For sure. You learn how people learn, and you learn how you learn from watching. You learn more from teaching. It's wonderful. And it's neat, too, that now we have this online community. I mean, back when I was a boy, there weren't no internet. Nowadays, It's true. I mean, my kids all grew up and they're like, yeah, clickety click, on screen. Half of their brain is devoted to their screens, and they think in digital terms. It's very powerful medium when used correctly, and very devastating when abused, as we know. What fun, though! It's so much fun to do glass and everybody's different ideas and experimenting. So, that's for me, that's kind of interesting because, I mean, Bill Parker, when he first was doing it, I used to know Ray Jardine, one of his. Bill Parker got involved with a company, or started a company or something, I forget. But there was a company called Visual Technologies, and there was a guy there working there called Ray Jardine, and Ray said that people would break into his lab and steal his notes because they wanted to learn plasma so bad.
Wow.
So, isn't that weird? I mean,
it's an exciting medium, and it's kind of like the new frontier of sorts.
It feels that way, but it's really just related to neon. With neon, you make tubular forms, and you use 2 electrodes, and with the plasma, you just mess it up a little bit. Well, it really, back in the 70s when I was hanging out with Paul Guyer and Joe Buccelli, I went to ask Mr. Guyer how to make neon, and he got this faraway look in his eye, and he said, I used to make neon in the 1920s. He said, I don't even remember how to do it anymore. He said, you go visit Joe Buccelli. I taught him. He got a bum leg in the war, and I taught him neon so he could feed his family. He's over in North Haven. I went over there, and there's this little Italian dude making neon, and I hung out and hung out and hung out and hung out and just watched. And he was teaching his son, and his son at that point was like late teens, totally cool, totally disinterested. Yeah. Of course, now Randy makes neon. But at that time, he was trying to teach Randy how to make neon. And Randy was, mildly interested, and I was sort of mildly interested. I just watched, and then I'd go home and try and throw glass at the wall and scream and yell. And it takes a long time to learn to do glass. It's so different than it used to be. It used to be I was the only one that I knew beside Joe Buccelli and Paul Guyer. It used to be this very rare alchemical kind of esoteric knowledge, and now it's like just a few clicks on the internet, you got YouTube videos showing you anything you want to know. So now really there's no excuse. It's like, oh, you think you're smart? Do something. Get to it.
So how did you and Wayne end up meeting and becoming you guys are a longtime friends, right?
Oh yeah. A long time ago. Oh my God, let's see. In New York, I was showing my work, and there was someone else showing, and their power supplies intrigued me, and I learned about Wayne Stratman, and I called him up, 266-8821. 617-266-8821. I remember the number from the 80s or something. It's still his number. That's the joke. So you can call him up, and he's like, I need some power supplies. He's like, oh, okay, that'll be 50, 100, whatever. And so I was buying power supplies from him, and then I guess then he came and he did a Sign of the Times article on me, and at that time my mother was alive and owned her house, and he came over and she looked at him and said, you just want his secrets. And he's like, no, I don't. I'm here to interview him. And so they're both Scorpios, so they're both very suspicious and cautious. And it's like, oh, yeah? So they sort of tussled a little bit. And I'm like, hey, it's okay, Mama. He's okay. Like, oh, well, okay. But don't tell him everything. Okay, I won't. So Wayne and I became friends. And God, and then Wayne went to China and made product. He made the Lumen glass, he did a lot of really good work on that. got rich and famous for a bit. And then I went over there and did the sculptured Electra and got briefly rich and famous and then spent it all. Now I'm back on the street. But at any rate, so then he sort of changed. He got more mellow and he got more into art in the past years. I mean, I'm 62 and he's 65. So it's kind of weird being so old and still thinking that you're 25 and like cool. it's perhaps it's evidence of advancing dementia, but it's a very strange experience to have time zip by and realize it's been 40 years. That's kind of a strange perspective to experience. I remember teachers saying this in school and me thinking, morons. Time doesn't pass. Time stays still for me. I'm young. Yeah, you're young. You're just 65 years old young. So at any rate, he's mellowed. I've mellowed. We've gotten more relaxed. We've gotten more confident in our age because of the technological experience and developments of the past third of a century or quarter century or whatever it is. We've been messing around for a long time and finally realizing there is a pattern to this. And now the kids, the pop pipe kids and artists, everybody, I mean, the world is changing. I remember being 13 and one of the cool dudes that used to hang out in front of Friendly's at the shopping center said to me, you watch, one of these days they're going to have the Beatles on Muzak in Stop and Shop. And I'm like, yeah, right. And then a few weeks ago I was in Stop and Shop and there it was, the Beatles. I forgot what song it was. It's like, oh my God. He said, he was a few years older than me, he said, every generation has its time. And now it's time for the hippies, except we're all in our 60s and 70s and 80s now. Mm-hmm. It's weird. So at any rate, what the hell's that all about? Let's see. What are we talking about?
Well, last thing we were talking about was mainly like, how'd you and Wayne met? And
that's it. So Wayne and I are now friends in a different way since we're sort of plasma brothers. And so if Wayne says, go to California, I say, well, all right, I'll go to California. And he says, go do a show up under Boston there. And I forgot the name of the town, Cohasset, I think. Go do the South Shore Arts Center. Go do the South Shore Arts Center show. All right, whatever. It's mellow. Because I like to stay home and work. I go on the beach and go walk in the woods and go in my little basement there, my little shack out in the backyard and do stuff. I like, welding metal and glass and do experiments and learning to make coils, learning to make low self-capacitance, high voltage coils that will be made en masse for a standardized inverter with some self-protective features. I mean, Bobby Nini makes those PVM 400s, but and I've been using them for decades. Thank God he did it. I remember begging him to do it, and he's finally doing it. But there's better ways to do it. There's better chips, and the industry is going to advance. I remember years ago saying to Bob, "Please make me an inverter," and then I kept calling him and bugging him. And one day he goes, God damn, I go to the bar to look at the girls and I find myself making circuit diagrams on the back of a goddamn napkin. He goes, I got inverters on the brain. I'm like, yes, Bob, yes. Onward, Bob. So that's when he made the PVM 300. And that had a transformer in it that was made by Gary Oxford. And now Gary has since died. And we can't get those good transformers anymore. So he's having these pieces of shit made in China that are burning up because the Chinese don't care. And, the trouble is it's a budding medium. And it's like, I'm not going to spend $100,000, Bob says, I'm not going to spend $100,000 on a coil if I'm only going to sell a few thousand pieces a year? It's like, In other words, there's no money in it. Where are you going to get free engineering and free manufacturing of totally custom devices that, by the way, will never, ever get through UL because they depend on RFI, radio frequency emission, in order to function. So like you turn on a 100-watt inverter and then you take your little AM radio and you drive a half a mile away and you turn it on and you can hear that goddamn inverter.
I see.
So there are legal, social problems, technical problems to a high-powered plasma lamp that are at this point insurmountable and illegal. In other words, with Bob's inverters, there's a 3-prong plug. And if you break off the ground plug, he's put a capacitor so that the thing will still work just with 2 prongs on the plug. Whereas my new inverter, if you break off that ground wire, the thing won't work because I've set it up such that way so that you cannot discharge the high-frequency electricity back into the electrical system. Because that's another criterion. You're not computers too. Anything electrical. Nowadays, all the power supplies for lights, for computers, for your cell phone charger, they all run on high-frequency oscillators called inverters. These high-frequency power supplies tend to discharge high-frequency energy back into the plug, into the house wiring. So you don't want that. You want a nice, clean 60-cycle wave coming out of the wall plug, and you don't want a high-frequency, basically junk signal on that wire. So there's standards in place. Well, an inverter with the ground wire broken off is going to discharge 50 watts at 30 kilohertz at 5 kilovolt into the wires. Now that could exceed the insulation capacity, start a fire in the wall, and burn your fucking house down. So that's not very cool. That is not very cool at all. So in order to prevent this, there are serious laws specifying you will not discharge high-frequency electricity back into your electrical system. So I was talking to Anders about this, and he's like, you're right. To build this thing up to industry standard specs is going to require some serious engineering and some expensive parts. And it's going to increase the size and the weight of the inverter considerably. So these are all hurdles that stand in the way of a 100-watt plasma display. Now, I commonly make plasma displays that are 100-watt, 200-watt, but they have to be carefully grounded and installed very carefully in a grounded environment because the electrical circuit is out of the wall plug, into the inverter, through the transformer inside the inverter, into the lamp, out from the lamp, into the surrounding air or other stuff, and then back to ground. So in the case of the New Britain installation, I had to go up there and carefully note that the aluminum window frames around each of these lamp displays was grounded, and that there was no other flammable or conductive material around that could get a charge and then arc to ground. So it's those little things, like minor things, like make sure you don't burn the place down. Like, okay, for instance, I was testing at my house, my studio house, I was testing a 300-watt inverter, and I had half a dozen xenon lamps, each one of them 8 feet long. Not half a dozen, 5. And I had I had a big-ass bunch of stuff all set up in the big, sort of the living room. It used to be a living room. Now it's a big mess. So I put down a bunch of cardboard boxes, stood the lamps on there, just lay them out, and I drove the thing. I'd turn it all up. It's like, wow, it's working. This transformer's not overheating. Nothing's overheating. This is really cool. I go downstairs to get the wash out of the washing machine, and I notice the light is on downstairs. I'm like, that's kind of weird, because I didn't turn it on or nothing. It's like, I wonder what's going on. It's like, oh, my God, I'm inducing so much current in the house wiring from my lamp display that it's lighting up the fluorescent light underneath in the basement. And I thought, yeah, it's like, oh my God. So if there was some sort of metal somewhere, a big piece of metal, and then there was another piece of metal that was grounded nearby and a little spark jumped, and there happened to be some wood or something nearby, if all the conditions were just so, you could start a fire. So it's kind of like, better think about this. So anytime you make a big display, you got to furnish a ground plane nearby. And that ground plane has got to be non-flammable and also insulated, so if someone touches the ground plane and then grabs the lamp, they don't end up becoming part of the circuit. And that's the other thing, is that, oh my God, I remember this now. I just remembered this. Back in 2006, when I put in the New Britain Museum display, originally they had no glass in front of it. Now they got a glass protective inside, so you can't go up from the inside of the hall. You can't get up and touch the lamps, because in order to get those big lamps to have light all the way to the end, I had to use low-pressure xenon. And low-pressure xenon, when you grab it, it goes really conductive, and it'll drag all the energy of the inverter into your hand. And they had a girl there named Morgan, and Morgan grabbed the lamp, and then I think I remember now, they put up a metal railing. It's like, no, not a metal railing. So she grabs the lamp, she leans forward, her knees touch the metal railing, and sparks jump off of her knees. And she was very surprised to have little holes burned in her knees. So that's when they decided to put up the metal, the glass thing. Because if you get between the hot lamp and the grounded metal, you can pull all the energy of the inverter through your heart. And an electrician told me that it only takes 3 milliamps to stop your heart. And these inverters run at 50 milliamps easy. So there's some science. So I guess what I'm saying with all these stupid words, what I'm really saying is, as this plasma thing gets out into the real world, there needs to be serious understanding of the function of it so that people don't hurt people.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that, Mundy. I mean, we could probably go on for maybe 5 more days of this information.
At least 5 days. I think this is probably podcast saturation number 1.
Mm-hmm. But it's all good. It's all stuff that needs to be heard.
It's fun to talk. It's fun that people care, because I've been working on this for my whole life. I have literally devoted my life to making crazy lights. It's been a lot of fun, and it feels like it's just starting.
I know you have a website. Do you use your Instagram all that much, or where do we find out? Well,
I'm getting better at Instagram. Yeah, I'm getting better at Instagram. And I got my Facebook account, my Instagram account. I mean, my kids made me start them, so otherwise they wouldn't communicate with me. But now I just use them to show people, because it's useful. I mean, it's like, what are you doing? Oh, here it is. Whoa! Take your cell phone, shoot a video, press share, go have dinner. This is nice. Then people tell me, "Oh, you're such a genius." It's like, ooh, I lap up the flattery. Flattery will get you everywhere. Say that again. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Say it some more. Because, I mean, it's ridiculous. I know it's stupid, but at the same time, it's hard to work in isolation.
The outro is Re-Entry by Lapse. Lapse is a Chicago-based artist whose work can only be described as a remedy for time consisting of motion and sound. If you give his music a listen, you'll understand exactly what that means. Check out his music on Facebook, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Bandcamp. Thank you for listening to the Taming Lightning podcast. I'd like to thank Mundy for taking the time to be on the podcast and being very generous with his knowledge and continuous support. Also, I'd like to thank Pittsburgh Glass Center for supporting me as a place of research and inspiration, as well as encouraging me to pursue this project, and the Plasma Art Alliance, where I have an access to a well of knowledge and connects me to some amazing people. Keep an eye out for more classes at Pittsburgh Glass Center as we work to provide a space for learning neon and plasma. For more information on the 2-night Neon and Plasma Glow workshop and the Summer Intensive with Wayne Stratman and Mundy Hepburn, please check it out on the web at www.pittsburghglasscenter.org or call our studio at 412-365-2145. If you'd like to support this, simply go to percyeccles.com and look for the tab Taming Lightning, or by typing taminglightning.net and click subscribe. Later, there will probably be other options in the future, but for now, like, share, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.